You are corrupt. How dare you rule against me? This whole court is a joke.
The slap cracked through the courtroom like thunder. Judge Judy didn't move. Not a blink, not a breath. The woman who hit her, drowning in diamonds and ego, smirked like she'd just bought the law itself. But Judy's calm? That was the warning before the storm. What happened in the next 3 minutes would turn that smug smile into a plea the world would never forget. Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from? And don't forget to smash that subscribe button. The air still vibrated from the slap. Even the sound felt expensive, sharp, deliberate, and dripping with entitlement. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Cameras froze mid-zoom. The audience, caught between disbelief and delight, didn't dare to breathe. Judge Judy didn't speak. She didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She just watched the woman standing before her, the one drowning in diamonds and ego, with that same unblinking gaze that had dismantled bigger egos than this one. Veronica Hale, 42, beauty magnate turned socialite, slowly adjusted her gold bracelet. "It was an accident," she said, voice brittle as glass. "She startled me." The bailiff took one cautious step forward. Judy raised a hand, just one, and he stopped. Silence stretched across the courtroom, long enough for everyone to feel its weight. Then Judy spoke, calm and cool. "Miss Hale, accidents do not leave fingerprints," the murmurs started. The cameras caught every word, every flicker of Judy's expression, or lack thereof. Veronica forced a smile, the kind meant for red carpets, not reality. "I'm sure we can move past this," she said, flicking her hair like the gesture alone could erase what just happened. "It's unbecoming of this setting to dwell on theatrics." Judy leaned back, eyes narrowing. "You're right. Let's dwell on facts." Her tone sliced through the room like a gavel before the strike. "You're here because your former assistant, Ms. Emma Clark, alleges wrongful termination, withheld wages, and defamation. You filed a countersuit for theft and breach of confidentiality. We will start there." Veronica's smile tightened. "Perfect." Emma sat quietly beside her attorney, younger, smaller, but steady in a way that looked rehearsed through pain. Her hands trembled slightly, clutching a folder of proof she had probably read 100 times. The folder looked worn, like it had fought its own war. Veronica turned toward her with a smirk. "Poor thing," she whispered, loud enough for the cameras. Still pretending to be the victim, Judy's head turned sharply. That movement alone silenced the entire room. "Ms. Hale," she said, her voice lowering, "you will not speak to the other party unless prompted. Do you understand?" "I understand you're making this far more serious than it needs to be." "And yet," Judy replied, "you're the one who made it physical." A ripple of gasps swept the audience, half horror, half satisfaction. Veronica's smile faltered. The calm authority in Judy's tone didn't need volume. It had gravity. Even arrogance knew when to sit down. Judy folded her hands on the bench. "Let us continue. The slap," she said with almost surgical precision, "will be addressed after we determine if your story holds up under truth." For the first time since the incident, Veronica blinked once, as slow, uncertain. The camera caught it. Her confidence faltered just long enough for everyone to notice. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, eyes never leaving hers. "Because if it doesn't, Ms. Hale," the air seemed to hold its breath again, "then that slap won't be the most painful part of your day." The courtroom went utterly still. The gavel hadn't struck yet, but everyone knew something was about to explode. The laughter came first, light, false, and practiced. Veronica Hale tilted her head toward the audience, as though they were her invited guests. "Oh, please," she said, still chuckling. "Everyone's acting like I committed a crime." It was a tap, not an assault. The courtroom didn't share her amusement. The sound of that nervous laugh felt like perfume in smoke, elegant but suffocating. Judge Judy didn't smile. "You're not on a talk show, Ms. Hale. This is a courtroom." Veronica's lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently, his voice trembling with damage control. "Apologize. Right now. It'll look better for you." Veronica ignored him. She adjusted her diamond necklace and turned toward Judy. "I'll apologize when I see respect returned to me. Until then, I will not be disrespected in front of—" The gavel struck once. One clean, controlled hit. That single sound burned through the air like thunder. "You don't decide when respect is given," Judy said, voice low but laced with warning. "You earn it." A murmur ran through the courtroom. The audience leaned forward. Even the bailiff's stance changed. More alert, ready. Veronica's eyes narrowed. I have built everything I own. My name, my brand, my reputation. People like her, she gestured toward Emma. Live off what people like me create. Emma didn't respond. She just looked at her hands. Judy watched them both. Ms. Clark, is that true? Do you live off what she created? Emma shook her head slowly. Her voice was soft but steady. No, Your Honor, I lived through it. The courtroom fell silent again. Judge Judy leaned back, eyes flicking toward Veronica. Continue, Ms. Clark. Emma hesitated. The kind of hesitation that comes from fear learned over time. I worked for Ms. Hale for 3 years. No contract, no overtime pay, no medical coverage. I wasn't even listed as an employee on paper. Veronica laughed again, brittle. She's exaggerating. Do not interrupt. Judy cut in, the words firm but calm. Emma continued. When I tried to leave, she told me I'd never get another job in the industry, that she could ruin my name before I built one. The camera panned across Veronica's face. Her smirk held, but her eyes flickered. Just once, Judy noticed. Ms. Hale, she said, your lawsuit accuses Ms. Clark of theft, specifically of taking trade materials, correct? Yes, Veronica said quickly. My product designs, my marketing drafts. Judy held up a hand. Did you ever pay her for creating them? Veronica hesitated. That's irrelevant. It's entirely relevant, Judy replied, calm as ever. Because if she built what you claim to own without payment, acknowledgement or contract, then the question becomes not about theft, but about ownership. Veronica's lips parted, but no words came out. The tension in the room grew thicker. The crowd's eyes darted between them, sensing a shift. Judge Judy rested her palm lightly on the bench, a gesture of quiet command. This court will deal with your attitude later. For now, we will deal with your actions. Veronica leaned back, her face hardening into stone, and as the silence settled, Judy's gavel struck again, once sharp. Final. It didn't just silence the laughter. It buried it. The echo of the gavel hadn't yet faded when the first tremor appeared in Veronica's smile. It was subtle, a tiny twitch at the corner of her lips, like her confidence had sprung a silent leak. The audience could feel it before they saw it. The diamond-hard arrogance she'd worn since walking in was beginning to fracture. Judge Judy leaned slightly forward, her tone measured and deliberate. Ms. Clark, you mentioned messages. I assume you have them with you? Emma nodded, clutching the folder against her chest. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. Yes, Your Honor, I kept records because no one believed me. A heavy pause followed that sentence, the kind of pause where truth waits to be heard. Judy extended her hand to the bailiff. Let's hear them. The bailiff took the phone gently from Emma and connected it to the courtroom's small speaker system. Static filled the air for a moment. Then a voice, Veronica's voice. It was unmistakable. Smooth, confident, slightly amused. You think you're irreplaceable? I can find 10 girls who'll do your job for half your pay and twice your obedience. The courtroom froze. Even the cameras hesitated, their focus tightening on Veronica's face. Her expression flickered. That's taken out of context, she said quickly. She's twisting it to make me look cruel. Judy's eyes didn't move. Play the next one. The second recording began, her voice again, sharper now. If you don't like it, leave, but don't expect a reference. I make and break people in this city. Someone in the audience let out a low whistle before the bailiff shot a look that silenced them. Veronica forced a laugh. That could be anyone. These recordings can be edited. People fake voices all the time. Judy's gaze didn't waver. Ms. Hale, are you suggesting Ms. Clark forged your voice twice? I'm saying she's desperate. Desperation doesn't create words you actually said, Judy replied, the calm in her tone more dangerous than any anger could be. Emma looked down, her voice trembling now. She told me once that humiliation keeps employees loyal. Veronica's lawyer leaned in again. We object to the admission of these recordings without verified timestamps. Judy cut him off, eyes never leaving Veronica. Objection noted. Overruled. We'll verify authenticity soon enough. Veronica crossed her arms, trying to look bored, but her breathing betrayed her. Shallow, uneven. The performance was cracking. Judy let the silence stretch, not as punishment, but as reflection. Every second of quiet was another mirror held up to Veronica's arrogance. "Miss Hale," Judy said softly, "you call this business. I call it bullying, and now you're under oath. So before you say another word, understand that the next lie will not just expose your character, it will define it." Veronica opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time, her confidence failed to arrive on cue. Judge Judy turned toward the bailiff. "Cue the second clip." The click of the button echoed like a warning shot. A faint electronic buzz filled the air, the kind of sound that makes everyone lean in without realizing it. The courtroom lights hummed above, steady and white. The bailiff nodded to Judge Judy, and the second clip began to play. Veronica's voice came through again, crisp and unmistakably hers. But this time there was no laughter, no charm, just raw arrogance. "I don't pay her because fear works better." "Fear makes people efficient," gasps erupted. Even the audience members who had come just for spectacle sat stunned. A reporter's pen stopped mid-stroke. The entire room seemed to pulse around those 7 words. Judge Judy didn't move. She let the silence after the clip linger like smoke. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, surgical, deliberate. "So fear is your currency." Veronica's eyes darted to her lawyer, then back to Judy. That's not me. That's spliced together. It's fake." "Fake," Judy repeated, the single word cutting through the air like a blade. "Are you certain?" "Yes," Veronica said, her tone cracking. "Anyone could have—" Judy raised a hand, silencing her mid-excuse. "Then perhaps you'd like to explain how this recording was obtained." Veronica blinked, thrown off. I don't know how they—" Judy turned to the bailiff, her gaze steady. "Please confirm the evidence source." The bailiff opened a small folder and handed a paper to the clerk, who passed it to Judy. The courtroom leaned forward as she read it aloud. "This file," Judy said, tapping the document with one manicured finger, "was retrieved directly from Ms. Hale's personal phone during the preliminary subpoena issued last week." The entire room inhaled at once. Cameras clicked. Veronica's face drained of color. "That's impossible. That phone never left my—" "Your attorney submitted it voluntarily for review," Judy interrupted, calm as a surgeon. "It was part of your own evidence packet." A whisper spread across the benches like wildfire. The same phone she'd offered to prove her innocence had betrayed her. Emma lowered her head, tears gathering, not of joy, but relief. Judy's tone softened slightly. "Ms. Hale, you seem to confuse control with power. They're not the same. Power is truth you can stand behind. Control—" She paused, letting the weight of her words land. "Is what people cling to when truth starts slipping away." Veronica's jaw tightened. Her polished facade was unraveling under the lights. The confident socialite who had entered the courtroom hours earlier now looked cornered, not by force but by truth. Her lawyer whispered something urgent, but she didn't listen. She couldn't. She was still staring at the phone on the evidence table, as if it might start confessing for her. Judy leaned back, folding her hands. "We'll proceed with the next phase. The recordings are admitted as authentic. Ms. Clark, you will provide a written statement for court records." Emma nodded silently. Judy's eyes found Veronica one last time before closing the file. "You wanted to be seen, Ms. Hale," she said quietly. "Now you are." The gavel struck once, and with that sound, the illusion of control shattered completely. For the first time since entering the courtroom, Veronica Hale looked human. Not the immovable marble statue she'd tried to be, but a person caught in the heat of her own deception. The shimmer of her diamonds suddenly felt excessive, almost desperate, as if they were trying to blind everyone from what was left of her dignity, the audience murmured. The sound wasn't loud, but it carried judgment, like a tide rising just below her heels. Judge Judy didn't move. She sat perfectly still, the embodiment of composure. Then quietly, "Ms. Hale, would you like to respond to your own words, or should we just keep listening?" Veronica swallowed. "I didn't mean it literally," she said, eyes darting toward the cameras. "People say things in jest." Judy interrupted gently but firmly. "Fear is not a punchline." The courtroom fell silent again. Veronica turned toward her lawyer, hissing through clenched teeth. Fix this. Now. He whispered something, but whatever it was, it didn't save her posture. She was sinking. The angle of her shoulders betrayed it before her voice did. Judy leaned back slightly, folding her hands. You said earlier that this court was making too much of a simple reaction. I wonder, Ms. Hale, is every consequence in your life something you dismiss as small once you're caught? Veronica forced a smile, one last flicker of pride. You don't understand, Your Honor. When you've worked as hard as I have— Worked? Judy's tone sharpened just enough to slice through the veneer. Or commanded. A ripple of reaction passed through the courtroom. Veronica's face flushed. You have no idea what it takes to succeed at my level. You're right, Judy said evenly. Because at my level, success doesn't require destroying anyone beneath me. That line hit like a quiet explosion. The audience froze. Even the cameras hesitated, as though capturing a sacred moment of humiliation. Emma looked up for the first time, not with anger but with disbelief that someone had finally said it out loud. Veronica laughed, brittle and cracking. You think you're better than me? Judy didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence between them did the talking. Veronica leaned closer to her lawyer, whispering sharply, She can't touch me, none of them can. Judy's eyes flicked upward. Her hearing was sharper than pride expected. Try me, she said softly, almost like an invitation. That single phrase carried more power than any shouting ever could. The energy in the courtroom shifted, imperceptibly at first, but real. The audience, once curious spectators, now leaned toward Judy. The moral gravity had changed hands. Judy took a slow breath. Ms. Hale, you've spent years convincing people your rules are the only ones that matter. But here there is only one rule: truth. The gavel struck once, deliberate and final. Every sound in the courtroom vanished with it. Veronica didn't look at the judge this time. She just stared at her reflection in the glass of her own jewelry, as if seeing the beginning of her undoing. The echo of the gavel still lingered in the air, vibrating like a low note that refused to fade. Judge Judy didn't speak right away. She let silence do the heavy lifting, and it did. Veronica Hale sat perfectly still, her hands gripping the edge of the table as though trying to anchor herself to what little control she had left. The courtroom had shifted. She could feel it. The power that once lived in her diamonds and tone had turned against her. Now, every shimmer, every breath, every forced smile looked like evidence. Judy finally broke the stillness. Ms. Hale, she said, her voice calm but direct, you built a business on presentation. But truth doesn't wear makeup. Veronica looked up, blinking hard, as if the line had hit somewhere beneath her pride. That's not fair, she murmured. You don't know what I've been through. Judy raised an eyebrow. Then enlighten us. For the first time, Veronica's confidence faltered into something resembling vulnerability. I came from nothing, she said quickly, words tripping over themselves. I had to be tough. I had to act like I wasn't scared because people smell weakness. I built everything with my hands, my image, my will. People respect me now because I never bend. Her voice trembled on the last word. Judy listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. That sounds exhausting, she said finally. Living like a performance instead of a person. The audience fell silent. Veronica opened her mouth, then closed it again, unsure if it was safe to speak. Emma, sitting only a few feet away, lowered her eyes, her fingers tightening around the torn check resting on the table in front of her. Judy noticed. Ms. Clark, she said gently, is that the check you mentioned earlier? Emma nodded and held it up. The paper was bent, half torn, one side smudged with ink and fingerprints. She paid me half my last month's salary, Emma said quietly. Then ripped the rest in front of me. The courtroom reacted like a wave. Gasps, whispers, shaking heads. Even the cameras zoomed closer to the fragile piece of evidence that said more than words ever could. Judy gestured for the bailiff to bring it forward. He placed it delicately on the bench before her. Judy flattened it under her palm, the edges trembling slightly from years of resentment pressed into paper. Ms. Hale, she said softly, you can tell a lot about character from the way someone ends things. You didn't just fire her. You tried to erase her. Veronica's mouth quivered, but no words came. The silence in her eyes said more than her defenses ever had. Judy turned to Emma. "You kept this?" "Yes," Emma whispered. "Not for money, for proof that I wasn't crazy." Judy nodded, the smallest flicker of empathy breaking through her stern exterior. "You weren't," she said. Veronica's breathing hitched, a single, sharp sound that broke the stillness. For the first time, she looked less like a defendant and more like someone finally realizing the world had stopped orbiting her. Judy placed the torn check flat on the desk, the fluorescent lights catching the wrinkles like scars. "We'll call the next witness," she said quietly. The paper told one story. "Let's hear the rest. If you were sitting in that courtroom, what would you do? I'd stay silent or speak up." The torn check lay flat beneath the courtroom lights, a paper scar under fluorescent truth. The camera panned across it slowly, catching every wrinkle, every jagged edge, a symbol of what money could buy and what it could destroy. Judge Judy sat still for a long moment. Then she tapped the bench lightly with her pen. "Ms. Hale," she said, "why was this check torn?" Veronica swallowed hard. She handed it back to me in anger," she stammered. "I tore it because it was useless at that point. She didn't want it." Judy tilted her head, her expression calm but dissecting. "You tore it in front of her?" "Yes, it was a moment of frustration." "Frustration," Judy repeated, letting the word hang between them like a suspended blade. "Frustration for being confronted or frustration for being caught?" Veronica shifted in her chair. Her diamond earrings caught the light, flashing like little warnings. "You're twisting everything I say." "I don't have to twist anything," Judy replied evenly. "It's already tangled." A faint chuckle rippled from the audience, a dangerous sound. Veronica snapped her head toward them, fury flashing in her eyes. "You think this is funny? Do you know who I am?" Judy didn't raise her voice, but the tone sharpened. "And we know exactly who you are, Miss Hale. That's what we're here to discuss." The laughter died immediately. Emma sat still, watching the woman who had ruled her life for years finally stumble on her own stage. But there wasn't triumph in her eyes, just exhaustion. The kind that comes after surviving something you never thought would end. Veronica tried to regroup, leaning back, forcing a smirk. "You all want to paint me as some villain, but none of you have ever built anything. You wouldn't survive a day in my world." Judy leaned forward slightly. "Your world runs on fear and vanity. The rest of us live on something steadier. Truth." The words hit like a quiet gavel. Then a movement in the gallery caught attention. A man, a tall grey suit, posture rigid, had been sitting silently in the back row. His head was bowed, hands clasped. The camera zoomed in, revealing his face. Veronica froze. "Oh my God," she whispered. Judy noticed the reaction immediately. "Do you know him?" Veronica hesitated. Her voice broke before she could stop it. "My husband." A murmur swept through the courtroom. Judy glanced toward him. He didn't speak, just looked at his wife with an expression that was neither anger nor sympathy. It was recognition, the kind that says, "I've seen this before, and I'm done pretending it's not real." Judy watched the silent exchange carefully. "Seems fear doesn't just work in business," she said quietly. Veronica's eyes flashed. "You don't know anything about my marriage." "Then enlighten us," Judy said, voice low, almost kind. The sort of kindness that exposes, not comforts. But Veronica didn't answer. She couldn't. The truth was already spilling from her silence. Judy turned toward the bailiff. "We'll proceed. I want to hear from someone who's seen her without the cameras." The bailiff nodded. "Your Honor, the next witness is ready." Judy's eyes stayed on Veronica. "Then bring them in." The doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. The heavy courtroom doors opened with a groan that made every head turn. Light from the hallway spilled in, cold, sterile, and uninviting. A woman stepped through. Her clothes were modest, her walk deliberate. She held a folder close to her chest, not as a weapon but as armor. Judge Judy's eyes followed her. "State your name for the record." "Rebecca Flores," the woman said quietly, her voice steady. "I worked for Ms. Hale's charity foundation." Veronica's expression twisted. "This is ridiculous. I don't even know who that is." Rebecca lifted her eyes. "You fired me last year, ma'am, for asking where the donations were actually going," the courtroom murmured. Cameras zoomed in. Judy didn't say a word. She simply gestured for Rebecca to continue. Rebecca stepped forward, opening her folder. "Your Honor, I brought copies of our foundation's expense reports." The numbers don't match the public statements. Tens of thousands listed as promotional costs, flights, hotel suites, designer purchases. She turned, facing Veronica. None of it went to the schools we promised to help. The air thickened with shock. The reporters leaned forward, pens scribbling furiously. Veronica's jaw tightened. You're lying. This is all fabricated, Judy interjected softly. Ms. Flores, are these official records? Yes, Your Honor. They were pulled from the Foundation's own accounting system. I printed them before I left. Judy nodded slowly. And these match the company accounts we subpoenaed. The bailiff stepped forward, whispering confirmation. Judy leaned back, eyes narrowing. Ms. Hale, would you like to respond to this evidence? Veronica's voice was sharp now, desperate. This is all part of a smear campaign. These women, they're jealous, vindictive. Careful, Ms. Hale, Judy interrupted. Every time you point a finger, another fact walks through that door. A few quiet laughs echoed in the back. But Judy silenced them with a single glance. The rich socialite who had strutted into the courtroom with diamonds blazing was now visibly trembling. The hands that once gestured with confidence now clutched at her own wrists, white-knuckled and shaking. Judy's tone softened, not in mercy, but in precision. I've seen arrogance in this courtroom before, Ms. Hale, but arrogance built on deceit collapses faster than truth ever will. Veronica looked around wildly, as if searching for an audience that still believed her. But the faces had changed. Pity had replaced fascination, and quiet disapproval had replaced awe. Her lawyer whispered, "We can ask for a recess. Try to reset the tone." "No," Judy said sharply. "We continue. The truth doesn't need intermission." The crowd leaned forward as Judy flipped through the printed pages. Each line item was another nail in the coffin of Veronica's reputation. Designer handbags under outreach, a luxury resort under training seminar, and a six-figure transfer labeled brand integrity. Veronica's breathing turned shallow. "You don't understand," she whispered. "They made me do it. My PR team, my accountants." "Your name's on every document," Judy replied coldly. "You were the brand." And with that line, the room seemed to tilt. The woman who once ruled through image now stood stripped of it. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled. The gavel hadn't fallen yet, but the world outside those walls already had its headline. Judy gestured toward the clerk. "Play the exhibit from her last interview." On the screen, Veronica's smiling face appeared much from a year earlier, saying clearly, "Control is everything. You can't help people until you own them first." The audience gasped. The sound from the video faded, but its echo lingered. That single phrase, "Now you can't help people until you own them first." It clung to the air like a ghost refusing to leave. For a long moment, no one spoke. Not Judy, not the attorneys, not the crowd. The courtroom was a graveyard of pretense, and Veronica Hale stood at the center, surrounded by the tombstones of her own words. The cameras were merciless now. Every blink, every tremor of her jaw was immortalized through the lens. The rich woman who once owned the spotlight now drowned beneath it. Judge Judy leaned back slightly. "That was your voice, Ms. Hale?" Veronica's eyes darted toward the screen. "That's a metaphor. I was speaking hypothetically." "Hypothetically about ownership?" Judy asked, voice calm, almost curious. "Or hypothetically about people?" The question sliced straight through her. Veronica inhaled sharply, but no answer came. The silence that followed was her confession. Behind her, a soft shuffle, her husband still sitting in the back row. He had moved his hands from his lap to his face, rubbing his eyes, not from disbelief, but from fatigue. Years of quiet complicity unraveling in real time. Veronica's voice cracked. "I'm not a monster," she whispered, as though the words could rewrite what the world just saw. Judy's gaze softened slightly, but her tone did not. "Then stop acting like one." The audience barely breathed. Even the bailiff's posture eased, as if the temperature in the room had changed. "Ms. Hale," Judy continued, "you've had the chance to tell your story. You've hidden behind lawyers, wealth, and attitude. But arrogance only protects the guilty until truth gets a microphone." Veronica's throat tightened. I am trying to protect my image." "That's the problem," Judy said. You keep protecting an image no one respects anymore. The statement landed harder than any gavel. Veronica's chin trembled. Emma, across the room, watched quietly. Not triumphant, not angry, just still, like someone watching the tide finally retreat after years of flood. Veronica pressed her palms to her face. Mascara streaked down her cheeks in dark, uneven rivers. "You don't know what it's like to lose everything," she said, voice shaking. Judy leaned forward. "You didn't lose everything, Ms. Hale. You traded it. Every lie was a down payment." The crowd murmured softly, not with mockery this time, but recognition. The tone in the room had changed. Arrogance was gone. What remained was pity. Veronica's husband stood quietly and began to walk toward the exit. He didn't turn back. She saw the movement, a blur through tear-blurred vision. "David!" she called out. "Please!" He didn't stop. The door closed behind him, sealing the sound of her plea in the courtroom like a confession no one wanted to hear. Judge Judy looked at Veronica, her voice low but clear. "You said honesty can't be bought. Let's see what you'll sell it for now." The sentence hung in the air, heavy and deliberate, both challenge and judgment. Veronica's shoulders crumpled as the first true tear slid down her cheek, not from anger but from recognition. Judy turned toward the bailiff. "Bring in the next witness. It's time we stop talking about her lies and start hearing the truth." The bailiff nodded and stepped toward the side door. The hinges creaked as it opened. A shadow moved in the doorway. Someone unexpected. "Do you think remorse should ever erase guilt, or does justice demand punishment no matter what?" The side door opened with a metallic groan, and the sound sliced through the still air like a blade through silk. Everyone turned. The cameras adjusted focus as a woman stepped through. Small frame, pale blouse, hair neatly tied back, the kind of quiet that makes people listen before she even speaks. Judge Judy gestured. "State your name." The woman cleared her throat. "Caroline Mendez. I was Ms. Hale's executive coordinator for nearly 2 years." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Another one. Another witness from Veronica's empire of silence. Veronica shifted in her seat, a faint tremor in her hand as she reached for her water. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she muttered. "They're lining up anyone who ever fetched me coffee." Judy didn't even blink. "Careful, Ms. Hale. Dismissiveness is a poor disguise for fear." Caroline stepped up to the stand. Her eyes didn't meet Veronica's. She looked straight at Judy, like she'd been waiting for this moment longer than she wanted to admit. "Ms. Mendez," Judy said, "you're under oath. Tell the court what you witnessed during your employment." Caroline hesitated only for a breath. "I witnessed cruelty," she said softly. "I saw assistants cry in the bathroom after 12-hour shifts. I saw people fired by text message for misspelling her name on emails. I was once told to publicly humiliate Emma, to teach her humility." The crowd gasped, not loudly but with a collective sting of disbelief. Veronica slammed her hand on the table. "That's a lie! I never said that!" Judy's voice cut through her fury like tempered steel. "You will not interrupt a sworn testimony again." "Understood." Veronica froze, half standing. The gavel didn't need to fall. Judy's words were enough. Caroline continued, her tone unshaken. "I wrote my resignation at 2 a.m. one night, but I never sent it. I was too scared. Then Emma left, and I realized it would never stop unless someone spoke up." Her hands trembled slightly as she held up a printed email, a digital echo of cruelty preserved in ink. "This is a message Ms. Hale sent me. It says, and I quote, 'Weakness is contagious. Fire anyone who catches it.'" The courtroom went silent. Veronica's face went pale. That's not what I meant." Judy leaned forward. "Then what did you mean?" Veronica's lips parted, but no sound came. The camera zoomed closer. Every attempt at control, every ounce of ego, gone. She looked at Judy, and for the first time, the defiance cracked completely. "I was angry," she whispered. "Everyone wanted something from me. I had to be tough." Judy's tone softened slightly, but her words didn't. "Being tough doesn't mean being cruel. It means being accountable." Veronica's breath hitched. She turned toward Emma, her voice small, foreign to her own mouth. You don't know how hard it is to be me." Emma met her eyes for the first time. Then stop making it harder to be anyone else. The crowd's silence carried the weight of thunder. Judy looked to the bailiff. There's one more person who needs to speak, she said quietly. Bring in the witness from her charity staff. The bailiff nodded. The door opened once more, revealing a calm figure stepping through the light. The door opened again, and the light that poured in seemed to shift the temperature of the entire courtroom. The sound of heels clicked slowly across the tile, deliberate, composed, confident, but not prideful. When the woman stepped fully into view, the audience stirred. She couldn't have been older than 30, dressed simply in a charcoal grey suit, hair pulled neatly into a bun. Her eyes, calm, observant, met Judge Judy's first. "State your name for the record," Judy said, voice steady. "Lila Clark," the woman replied. Emma's head lifted instantly. The recognition hit her like a tremor through glass. "Lila," she whispered. The courtroom froze. "Yes," the woman said gently, turning to face Emma. "I'm your sister." Veronica blinked in confusion. "Sister?" the audience gasped. Reporters scrambled to their keyboards. The air snapped with tension. Judge Judy's tone remained even. "And your relationship to the defendant?" Lila's gaze turned to Veronica, unwavering. "I worked as the managing director of Ms. Hale's charity foundation for 18 months. Judy nodded slowly. "The same foundation whose funds we've already discussed?" "Yes, Your Honor. Proceed." Lila opened her folder, her movements calm, almost rehearsed, the precision of someone who had been waiting years to be heard. "I oversaw outreach budgets, donor communications, and event logistics. But as months went by, the numbers stopped adding up. Donations vanished into miscellaneous expenses. Invoices were rewritten. When I questioned it, I was told to stay quiet, that speaking out would make me unemployable." Her tone was calm, but the truth inside it burned. Veronica scoffed. "You're lying. This is some orchestrated ambush." "Ms. Hale," Judy warned, "you're on thin ice. Let the witness speak." Lila's gaze didn't waver. "When I refused to falsify the final audit report, I was terminated. The next day, my sister Emma received an email from Ms. Hale stating that the Clark women share the same disease, entitlement." The words hit harder than any recording could. Judy exhaled slowly. The courtroom felt smaller, the air heavier. Veronica's lips parted in disbelief. "I didn't know you two were related," she said weakly. "If I had—" Lila cut her off, calm but sharp. "Would that have changed how you treated us, or just how public the damage became?" The question hung there like a blade suspended by air. Veronica faltered, her eyes flicking between the sisters. "You both think I ruined your lives, but I made you tougher. I gave you— You gave us trauma," Emma interrupted quietly. "And a reason to find our voices." The audience murmured in stunned silence. Even Judy's expression softened, not in sympathy but in quiet respect for truth spoken with restraint. Lila set the folder down. "I didn't come here for revenge," she said. "I came so she couldn't rewrite the story one more time." Judge Judy nodded once, slowly. "Truth has a way of doing that for itself." Then she turned to Veronica. "Ms. Hale, you built your empire on controlling people's narratives, but today you don't own the story anymore." Veronica's eyes filled with tears she didn't try to stop. The diamond armor had cracked completely. Lila's voice softened. "You told me I'd never work again," she said quietly. "You were right. I stopped working for you and started working for the truth." The crowd exhaled in one collective breath. The room seemed to vibrate with silence, not a heavy silence, but the kind that carries truth in every molecule of air. Veronica Hale sat motionless, staring at the two sisters sitting side by side, the ghosts of everything she had buried under power and perfume. Her lips trembled. For the first time, her voice was small. "You set me up," she whispered, but even she didn't believe it. Emma didn't look angry anymore, just tired. "You set yourself up, Veronica." Lila's eyes softened, but her tone remained steady. "We just stopped helping you hide." The audience held their breath. The woman who had strutted into court like she owned the world now looked like she was fighting gravity itself, as though the weight of her image was finally too heavy to carry. Judge Judy didn't rush to speak. She let the silence do its work, because sometimes justice doesn't need volume. It just needs stillness. When Judy finally did speak, her voice was softer than it had been all day. "Ms. Hale," she said, "do you understand what just happened here?" Veronica blinked through tears, confusion spilling into shame. "You've destroyed me." Judy shook her head. "No, truth did. I just gave it a microphone." The line hung in the air like scripture. Veronica tried to stand, but her knees buckled slightly. The bailiff instinctively moved forward, but she waved him off, forcing herself upright. The camera zoomed in. Her once perfect eyeliner streaked, her diamond necklace tilted awkwardly against her collarbone. Every trace of elegance looked like evidence of denial. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she said, voice breaking. I didn't know how else to stay in control." Emma's eyes filled with quiet sadness. "That's the problem," she said softly. "You never learned how to exist without control." A pause. Then, almost imperceptibly, Veronica nodded. A fragile gesture of recognition, maybe the first honest one of her life. Judy folded her hands, expression unreadable. "Sometimes," she said, "the hardest part of justice isn't punishment. It's reflection." Veronica looked down at her trembling hands. The rings that once gleamed like trophies now looked like shackles. "Everyone will see this," she murmured. "My name, my brand, your name will survive," Judy said, cutting her off gently. "But it won't mean what it used to." That sentence struck harder than any ruling. Emma reached for her sister's hand, and the courtroom seemed to soften, the way a storm softens once it's destroyed everything loud enough to hear itself. Lila stood, facing the judge. "Your Honor, we don't need more than acknowledgement. We just need her to stop pretending she's the victim." Judy nodded once, her gaze never leaving Veronica. That's justice enough for today. The gavel hadn't fallen yet, but the verdict was already written in the faces around her. Veronica sank slowly back into her chair, tears tracing quiet lines down her face. Not the tears of someone defeated by others, but of someone finally seeing herself clearly for the first time. Judge Judy glanced toward the clerk. "We'll take 5 minutes. Not for the court, for her." As the room slowly emptied, Veronica caught her reflection in the dark glass of the camera lens. For a moment, she didn't see a celebrity. She saw a woman she'd never met before. The courtroom emptied slowly, like air escaping a wound. The murmurs of the audience faded into the hallway until all that remained were the echoes. The click of a pen, the creak of a chair, the sound of a life unraveling in quiet motion. Veronica Hale sat alone at her table. The bright lights above her, once flattering, now felt like interrogation lamps. She rubbed her temples, smearing makeup into streaks of grey and black. Her reflection in the polished wood of the desk looked unrecognizable, softer, smaller, almost frightened. Judge Judy hadn't left. She sat still, hands folded, studying Veronica not as a defendant now, but as a person on the brink of truth's collapse. The silence between them was profound. There was no shouting, no grandstanding, just the gravity of reality settling in. "You may speak, Miss Hale," Judy said finally. Her voice was low, steady. "No cameras, no audience. Just you and your conscience." Veronica lifted her head slowly. "Why do you care?" she asked, voice cracking. "You've already won." Judy didn't move. "It's not about winning. It's about seeing what happens when the noise stops." The line landed in the room like a heartbeat. Veronica's eyes darted toward the back of the room, toward the door where her husband had exited. It was closed now, quiet. "He won't come back," she whispered. "None of them will. I spent my life making people afraid to leave me. Now they can't leave fast enough." Judy leaned back, her gaze unreadable. "That's what happens when you build a kingdom out of fear. It looks powerful until the first wall cracks. Then everything collapses." Veronica exhaled, a sound somewhere between a sob and a laugh. "You think this is justice? I think this is consequence," Judy replied. "Justice happens when someone learns from it." The air felt heavy, not with judgment but with something quieter, sadder. At the far end of the room, Emma stood near the exit, hesitant to leave. She looked back once, her eyes soft, uncertain. Then she said, "I forgive you." Veronica turned sharply, stunned. "You... what?" Emma's voice trembled, but her resolve didn't. "You took so much from me, but I'm not giving you my hate. You don't get that power anymore." The words hit harder than any ruling ever could. Veronica's shoulders crumpled. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Judy watched the exchange, her eyes thoughtful. "Forgiveness," she said softly, "isn't for the guilty. It's for the ones who refuse to stay victims." Emma nodded faintly and left through the side door. The silence that followed was unbearable. Veronica stared at the floor, her tears falling soundlessly onto the polished wood, tiny drops of reflection breaking against a surface that once reflected her pride. Judy looked down at her file, then closed it. "We'll reconvene shortly," she said. But she didn't move. She stayed just long enough to whisper. Not for the cameras, not for the record, but for the woman before her. "You asked me why I care," she said quietly. "Because arrogance doesn't need punishment. It punishes itself." Veronica didn't look up. Her hand reached for a tissue, trembling, and for the first time, she whispered. Not to Judy, not to Emma, but to herself. "I don't know who I am without the noise." When the courtroom doors opened again, the light was different, softer, warmer. Afternoon sun streamed through the high windows, catching the dust in gold suspension, as if time itself had slowed to watch what was about to unfold. Veronica Hale sat straighter now. Her makeup had mostly faded, her hair had lost its perfection, but her voice, when she finally spoke, carried a kind of fragile steadiness. "I'm ready," she said quietly. Judge Judy nodded once, signaling the bailiff. The courtroom began to fill again. Reporters, spectators, Emma and Lila side by side in the front row. There was no tension now, no noise. "Only expectation," Judy began. "Ms. Hale, before I deliver the court's decision, you will have the opportunity to speak. Choose your words carefully. They will be remembered." For a moment, Veronica said nothing. Then she stood. The rustle of her designer suit was the only sound in the room. "Everything I built was for respect," she said softly. "For people to see me as more than where I came from. But somewhere along the way, I forgot the difference between being respected and being feared." Her eyes glistened, not with self-pity, but something that finally resembled recognition. "I hurt people. I told myself it was leadership, that it was strength, but it was cruelty dressed in ambition. I was so afraid of being small again that I made everyone else feel smaller." A ripple moved through the courtroom. The cameras zoomed in, but no one interrupted. Judy's eyes didn't soften, but her silence gave space, the kind that allows truth to breathe. Veronica turned to Emma and Lila. "You didn't deserve what I did to you," she said, voice breaking. "And I can't undo it. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I see it now. I see me now. And I don't like what I see." Emma's expression stayed calm, compassionate. Lila gave a small nod. Neither spoke. They didn't have to. The silence between them said more than any words could. Judy finally stood, taking a slow breath before speaking. "Ms. Hale, this court finds in favor of Ms. Clark and Ms. Flores. Immediate restitution is to be issued to both plaintiffs, along with a full financial audit of your foundation. Effective immediately." Veronica nodded. No arguments, no rebuttals, just quiet acceptance. Judy added, "The public will see this record and they'll see your statement. What they choose to remember, the arrogance or the accountability, will depend on what you do next." Veronica exhaled shakily. "So then I'll start with the truth." Judy's tone turned reflective, almost gentle. "Let truth follow you, Ms. Hale, everywhere you go. That's the only thing that won't abandon you." The gavel rose, then fell at a single, echoing strike that sounded less like judgment and more like closure. The reporters began to move, but slowly, as though unsure if they had just witnessed justice or redemption. Veronica sat down again, her hands folded neatly on the table, eyes unfocused. For the first time, the silence didn't terrify her. It felt like space, not emptiness, but possibility. As the courtroom emptied, Veronica whispered almost to herself, "Maybe this is what freedom sounds like." From the bench, Judy murmured just loud enough to be caught by the cameras, "Only if you live it." Before you hear the verdict, ask yourself, can anyone truly change, or do people just get better at hiding who they are? The courtroom was empty now. The gavel's echo had long since faded, but its weight lingered, not in sound, but in silence. That rare kind of silence that isn't absence, but aftermath. Judge Judy sat at the bench reviewing the paperwork she'd already signed. The words on the page were simple: restitution, audit, public statement, yet the air around them carried something far heavier. Consequence. Across the room, Veronica Hale sat alone at the plaintiff's table. The cameras had gone. The audience had dispersed. No makeup artist to fix the shine on her skin, no assistant to whisper reminders of posture or presence. Just her and the faint hum of the fluorescent lights. Her diamond earrings lay beside her hand, removed quietly during the recess. They caught the light once more before dimming like dying stars. Judy closed the final file and looked up. "Ms. Hale," she said softly. Veronica glanced over, startled, as though she hadn't expected her name to be spoken anymore. "I have one last question," Judy continued. "Do you understand why this happened?" Veronica's voice was small, but it carried through the room. "Because I thought power meant safety, and I mistook fear for respect." Judy nodded once. "That's closer to the truth than most ever get." For a long time, neither spoke. The light in the courtroom shifted again, growing warmer as the afternoon began to fade. Outside, through the tall windows, the sky was turning the color of forgiveness, that muted gold that only comes after storms. Emma and Lila re-entered quietly from the side door, papers in hand. They weren't smiling, but their presence wasn't heavy anymore, just steady, peaceful. Emma stopped near Veronica's table. "I'm not here to gloat," she said softly. "I just wanted to make sure you heard what the judge said. The truth follows you. It's not your enemy anymore if you let it teach you." Veronica nodded, eyes glassy. "I don't know where to start." Lila stepped forward. "Start small. Start honest." The two sisters left together, walking toward the light-filled exit, two silhouettes finally unchained from a story that wasn't theirs to carry anymore. Judy watched them go, then turned her gaze back to Veronica. "Justice isn't about humiliation," she said quietly. "It's about revelation. Sometimes when the world takes away everything you used to hide, what's left is the person you were supposed to become." Veronica looked up, tears steady now. "Do you really think people can change?" Judy stood slowly, gathering her notes. "I think people can learn. Change is what happens after they decide to listen." The words hung in the air like a benediction. Veronica didn't speak again. She sat still, staring at the quiet courtroom, the place where her world had broken, and where perhaps something honest had finally begun. Judge Judy paused at the doorway, turning back once more. "Miss Hale," she said, voice soft but firm. "Arrogance buys attention. Truth earns consequence. You've finally learned the cost of both." Then she left, her robe sweeping through the golden light. The camera lingered on Veronica, motionless, her reflection shimmering faintly in the polished wood of the bench, fractured, yes, but whole enough to begin again. And as the screen faded to black, the narrator's voice, my calm, reflective tool, closed the story. Justice didn't roar that day. It whispered, and in that whisper, even arrogance learned to listen.